This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. Now, here's your host, Kevin Pruitt.
This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, and our guest today is part mad scientist, part futurist, and an unstoppable capitalist. With over 25 years in the high-tech and production or product development arena, he's held division leadership roles at powerhouse companies like Hewlett-Packard, Verifone, and Nike, all while amassing an impressive collection of 18 patents, probably 18 and counting. He doesn't just foresee the future, he brings innovations to life before you even realize you need them. He is a true visionary. His pioneering spirit sets him apart. He's been a featured expert in Inc. and made appearances on major networks such as CNN, Fox Business, and MSNBC. His expertise includes interactive videos, artificial intelligence, and the fascinating world of neuroscience as applied to sales, marketing, and customer engagement. Currently in his labs through Relatable, he's cooked up a new category of software called interactive video relationships. This is in response to the shift away from the attention economy and lead generation to the shift toward the relationship economy and demand generation. In fact, Gartner reported 72% of all B2B and B2C buyers never want to have an interaction with a salesperson. Relatable creates a choose-your-own-adventure interactive experience, plus reconnecting if the viewer pauses or re-engaging with additional relatables based on viewer answers and actions. That makes it personal and relevant. Today's digital world needs to go beyond the likes and comments. People want to build relationships with brands. Most importantly, people want to do business with people they like, know, and trust. That's Relatable, delivered on your phone in the palm of your hand. Currently living and creating in Southern California. Please join me in welcoming Peter Lisoskie to the Marketing Umbrella Podcast. Peter, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Kevin. I think actually that was not my bio. That was my AI twin.
You know what's so hard? It's so hard to sit there and listen to a bio that somebody else is reading about you especially when we're on the gallery mode. But man, I know this is just scratching the surface because you've lived a few years and had a few experiences. But what else would help our listeners have a real good handle on who Peter is?
Well, Kevin, I get asked that quite a bit, and I always tell people that, you and I have been around the block, we've done a lot of things, but I always say it's like, hey, what have you done lately? And I look at it, and I'm always asking the question, what else is possible? How can we innovate? But not just for the sake of tech, but really for the sake of how do we create things that people can really use. That in my company, my company's name is iProlio, and that's Latin for I engage. I'm really about how can we create better human connected technologies. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of good technology out there, but I'm really focusing in the human arena, and that's because I really think, Kevin, that it's the shift is happening. It's not coming. And there's some online behaviors we'll talk about, Kevin, that have happened, but I really believe that over the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see a movement away from B2B, B2C, and more towards H to H, human to human interaction.
That'd be quite a change from today.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's going to be, and I mean, just like you see the AI shifts today and what's happening. I mean, let's talk about that or on a future show. I get, people ask me to keynote speak about that kind of stuff, and it's just fascinating. For me, the world where it is, and the older I get, the more I want to do. But I will say this one last thing. For me, this is my fourth startup, and after I left the corporate world, and I'm really more about how can we create an impact and support a movement, or have a possibility to create a movement. So part of that movement is the relationship economy. We'll get into that in more detail on how it's affecting marketing agencies and all kinds of business.
Right. So you mentioned, hey, this is your fourth startup. So let's just walk through them really quickly. Just I'm sure that's a journey that has a lot of meandering in that. But take us back a few years, and you're stepping out of your corporate roles, and you're stepping into your first startup. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, so just a quick story back up a little bit. The last division that I ran, so I was a division manager, and I ran a division for a company called Verifone, which you probably know.
Yep.
When you do the payment transactions, I had to end up laying off 522 people in one day.
Wow.
We won't get into the foul language here, but I said a few choice things to my boss, and I left. And so the last job I took was vice president of product strategy for a consulting firm in Seattle. And I did that for a couple of years, and it was interesting, and I loved it. But I wanted to do, I want to do my own thing. Well, my first startup, that was from that consulting firm. I ran into these two neuroscientist guys while we were doing these. We do these week-long product strategy sessions, and most of it was in tech and brain research and all that kind of stuff. So, I come from the area of product development, voice of the customer. We worked with Harvard, MIT, all these highfalutin colleges. And when I was talking about that, these guys were back in the corner and they were like whispering and kind of snickering. So at the coffee break, Kevin, I went up and I said, "Hey," I introduced myself. I said, "I heard you talking about when I was talking about voice of the customer." I said, "Man," I said, we're a couple of neuroscientists, and people do not buy based on benefits and features. That's all wrong. They buy based on emotions and what happens in the reward circuit and the nucleus and comes in the brain." And I went, "Really?" So as an engineer, I'm curious. You go, "Can I?" So I said, "Hey, can I take you guys? There's a nice steakhouse if you're up from Seattle called the Met." So I took them there, and we had dinner and drinks for about 3 hours. And this is not NLP, and I'm not knocking NLP, but this is fMRI, EEG, brain research study. And I'm going, "Hey, can I hang out with you guys for a while?" And that was the start of my first startup. And I developed this whole system from all this data research called the Buying Mood Blueprint. And hence, that was my first startup. And I sold, it was a course, it's like 72 videos. I've sold over 10,000 copies of that darn thing. And it's really helped a lot of people, not just in sales, which it has, but also kind of in personal life too. And the one thing that was latched on by a lot of these techies, especially in the social media industry, is the dopamine effect. We all know that with the red dot and that kind of thing. That's a nucleus that comes with addiction in the brain, just like alcohol or drugs. That's why we're called users.
Wow.
In my opinion. Well, yeah. In my company, we don't call our customers users. We call them builders or viewers. We stay away from that because, in my opinion, the only places users are used are drug addicts and in social media.
See, you've changed the terminology of the whole system now, because nobody's going to be able to unhear that, what you just said.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to, because I'm trying to get people to think about what they do and how they do it. Part of the other thing too is, I don't know if you've ever heard of category design, but we go back to, I'm sure you've read a lot of books, but you remember Good to Great and Crossing the Cows and all these books, right? I did too. They were the field guides for product development. That's how we did things back in the day. Well, a friend of mine, Christopher Lockhead, and some of his buddies wrote a book called Play Bigger, and it's very, very good. I think it's the 21st century methodology for creating products and services. And category design, category kings are like Uber, Airbnb, Google. It's about doing something different, because I tell people all the time, heaven knows, the world does not need a better mousetrap. We have too many of them. So if you're going to do something, I will say the sweet spot is find that non-obvious solution to an obvious problem. And then you want to develop your unique point of view and your change of perspective. This applies to every single business out there. I don't care whether you're a product type business or a service type business, because I will say this, there's thousands of SaaS companies like mine. There's thousands of marketing agencies. There's thousands of fractionals, coaches, consultants. There's just thousands of all of us. So how do you stand out? See, in the attention economy, it's about noise. And this is what you're seeing up on social media. It's more and more and more noise. And now we have this thing called artificial intelligence, which makes it easy to push a button and create even more noise. Right? Oh,
exponential noise
where we
now.
have to kind of think about things a little bit,
For sure. As you were kind of rolling that out, I'm sitting here thinking, Man, I wonder how much his own personal philosophy has changed through these startups, because, or maybe that's the reason you went from startup to startup,
Yeah.
is because there was a shift in your thinking, or a shift in the, the way we approach things. So walk us through that a bit.
Well, yeah. So just go back. So that was my first startup. Then my second startup, I said, I've been in tech my whole life, so I'm going to do something different. So I started. The reason why I did this is because I had taken care of my father for a couple of years before he passed away, and I basically had to shut down the whole life. This is before they had all the things, the visiting angels and all these companies, right? And so my dad and I, though, he taught me the trades from the time I was 5 years old till I graduated, went to college. I built houses. We built custom waterfront homes up on Puget Sound, up in Washington State. So that was my second startup. I ran a construction company. I said, I'll build it up and sell it off in 5 years, which I did. I think we were at the top end. We were in about 6.6 million a year, and I had about 75 employees. But it taught me a lot. I mean, I took my leadership skills from division and then combined it with the trade skills. But still, there was a fascinating thing that happened in that company. And have you ever heard of the Pike Place Market up in Seattle, where they have the bronze pig and they throw the fish? It's been on Monday Night Football if you watch it. Up there, they throw the salmon and stuff. But, they developed a philosophy. It's called the fish philosophy, which I used in that company. And there was 4 tenets, and I'm trying to remember all of them. It's choose your attitude, be present, play and have fun, and I'm trying to remember the fourth. But anyway, these 4 tenets built this whole, it was basically a work culture. It built the whole phenomenon there. And, the funny thing, this is before we had a lot of tech and stuff. So I'd take these guys, there was a restaurant called Buzz Inn up there, and I used to take these guys out for breakfast once a month. And, as we grew, the men and women, we took over the whole dang restaurant. But I would have them get up and tell fish stories. And they would talk about how they treated the customer and how they, no matter whether they had a fight with their girlfriend or wife in the morning, they were focusing on someone other than themselves, right? This was the transformation. It really was, in my company, I always say to everybody, look, everybody's a teacher and everybody's a student. I can learn as much from you as you can from me. I don't know everything. Yeah, I've been around the block a few times, but there's a lot I can learn. I learned from these guys. And so they would tell fish stories, but I had these little goldfish, and I would throw these fluorescent goldfish to them. The funny thing about this, Kevin, was it was like a status symbol. These guys out in their trucks, they had all their goldfish light up, and I'd hear them talk, I got 17 goldfish, you only got 8. But it was a transformational thing. So I took that away from that startup. And then the third startup I did was totally different. I partnered with a lady, and we had a wellness center in California. And part of that was because somebody asked me in a previous show, it's like, because we were talking about, outlooks on life, and they asked me, have you traveled? I said, well, the only continents I haven't been to is Africa and Antarctica. Everywhere else I've been to. And, it's funny, Kevin, traveling, all over South America, all over Middle East, all over Europe, all over Asia. And this leads up to Relatable. This is why I'm telling these stories, because, we have a life built on these stories and journeys and experiences that lead us to this next innovation, right? So
that's the best innovations.
It's the best kind of innovation because it's really dealing with people. And what I found is a younger man traveling all over the place, as a corporate divisional guy, I could be sitting in Abu Dhabi, I could be sitting in Scotland, I could be sitting in China, or I could be sitting down in Peru. And you know what? When you start, you can't get much different between Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, and us in America. It's pretty different.
Yeah.
And how they treat women and, their whole culture. But the funny thing was that I learned was no matter where you went, if you started talking about fairness, kindness, empathy, love, it was all the same. All the same. And it's these universal principles, right? And so that was another thing. And when I was in Asia, I learned all of these Eastern philosophies and medicines and things just by hanging out there, because I was there. I mean, it got so bad, Kevin, that I'd walk in these 747-400s. I'd be up in the bubble traveling, and all the flight attendants, all the pilots, they all knew me. Oh, Pete's back. So I was living, and that was, that led me to my forced startup or leaving corporate and then heading into the startups is because I remember standing looking out, you know how those little portal windows in the planes, right? And I'm looking out this thing, flying over the polar cap that year for probably the 17th time. I don't even know how many times. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I'm going to die on one of these planes at 55. This is bad, you know? And so that kind of led to the layoff that I did at Verifone and leaving. I don't know how, you know, that worked out. Maybe it was kind of a universal wish or whatever. But it was one of these things that dawned on me. Plus, I had 2 boys growing up at home. I wasn't feeling good about myself because I wasn't being a good dad. And, you know, everybody's got their own priorities, but mine is health, family, work, and in that order. Yeah. And so, you know, I just felt like I wasn't being a good family man. And so fortunately, you know, it worked out, split up. So then after the wellness center, that we built up and sold off in 5 years. And, you know, the cool thing on that one was being an engineer, you know, I discovered this infrared technology and it had clinical studies. So, you know, this is not like, hey, anecdotal. Right. I read all the clinical studies and it was like approved it. And sure enough, Kevin, man, I invested in 3 of those. And we got hooked up with Kaiser Permanente, and we started the doctor of osteopathy because they're a little more forward thinking than some of the general MDs. They started sending women with breast tumors down there, and then we were getting tumor reductions. And it was incredible. But you know, the most incredible thing was, it wasn't for me, it was my partner. As a female, they'd come over, they'd start crying, they'd hug her, they'd go, I cannot tell you, you are saving my life. And she goes, no, it's not that. So what we decided to do, this is that I talked to you off air. The learning lesson for me there was you should always have as your top value in a company, how can we get first? So what we did is we saw this was happening. So every Tuesday for 12 hours, we opened up the infrareds for free. And all the women from Kaiser Permanente could come down because we didn't care. It was about the impact we were trying to make, not the money we were trying to make. Right. And so that also taught me, look, the next thing you do, make sure, focus on impact and movement first. The money will always come. And it is. So these are all the culmination of things, Kevin, that led me to then looking at out in the world. Because one of the things I get invited to speak about, one of the things I'm just fascinated about too, Kevin, are what are called megatrends. And you know, everybody
got a few of those happening right now.
Yeah, like well, well, you know, here's the thing. I will tell people this. In my belief, AI right now, generative AI, is not the megatrend. It's a false pretender. AI with blockchain, decentralized node technology, and Web3, that's the megatrend that's coming. Yeah. And so, in fact, I don't know if anybody listening to this knows about Gartner hype curves. They've been around about 40 years. But if you look up Gartner hype curves for generative AI, the hype curve goes like this. It goes up, it goes into maximum hype, and then it crashes, is in a trough for a while, and it comes out to mainstream. If you guys all remember fintech, Bitcoin, right? Bam! And then now it's coming back. Well, guess where generative AI is? Right at the top of the hype curve. Something's going to happen either nationally in the United States or globally. It's going to cause that thing to crash before it emerges again. So
we should short it right now. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not making it. No, I'm not making any investment advice. But I just, you know,
no financial advice.
Yeah. So, you know, when I looked at these, you know, so tech is that. It's also internet, cell phone. Everybody knows those are megatrends. They're unstoppable forces. Last I checked, I think 96% of the worldwide population of over 8 billion has a cell phone now. I mean, that's pretty amazing when you think about some of the impoverished
pretty high adoption rate.
Yeah, they still have cell phones. Yeah. So, but there's these socioeconomic megatrends that also fascinate me. And these are the things I started looking at. And I don't know, have you heard the term native digital at all? Okay. So I didn't, 2 years ago, I didn't know what that was. And actually, Christopher Lockhead, who wrote that book, he talked about it, he told me about it. And so I went and looked, and I didn't realize this, but they're now 51% of the global population and growing. They're 35 and younger. And the key thing about these guys as a definition for everybody listening is native digitals don't know a time before the internet, and a lot of them don't know a time before a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure if I asked Kevin about the quarter phones going around the corner to get privacy, that's what we remember. Right?
Brother, I go back to party lines. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. There are pagers and all this other stuff that we have, that old tech. But, you know, it's interesting what happened, or what is happening and has happened, is the native digitals are driving a lot of this interaction in community. This is why you're seeing all these communities popping up everywhere. You know, they started out in Twitch, Discord, and all this stuff, and now it's starting to move into the more of the mainstream, right? We're seeing these communities. I'm in a couple communities that I feel are pretty good. I had to shift around to get the right ones fit for me. But that's only the beginning. So I identified 5 other online shifts that have happened. And if you want, I can share those with you, because that ties into kind of why Relatable was developed.
well, it's a great transition time. I mean, so yeah, touch on those briefly, and let's jump into Relatable and talk about the development of that application.
So I'll just go through these quickly. So number 1 is, all these guys, if you're out here listening, you're probably going to do this. Yep, that's true. Number 1 is, right now, and this ties into that percentage that Kevin gave you, that 72% of all business B2B buyers never want to talk to a salesperson. That's even enterprise. What's happened is people go online and they do their own research.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if I were to ask you guys listening, how many people out there listening to this have the first thought when they're looking for a product or service going, hey, I think I'll pick up the phone and call a salesperson? We just don't do that. Yes, you're saying it's common sense, right? That's number 1. Number 2, everyone is watching or listening. This is why Kevin's podcast is so popular, because you're either watching or listening. We're not doing a lot of reading. In fact, the native digitals invented an acronym, TLDR, too long didn't read. We're just not doing that. Even baby boomers and Gen X and millennials. So video and audio is really where it's at. Now, I think podcasts will always be good, because I can't drive a car. I can't run outside. I can't do these things where I have to sit there and watch video. I'll crash my car. So, you know, the listening thing is good. And I think, you know, we could talk about that in a future show with voice to text, B2C. There's some burgeoning things with IoT that's coming. I think it's very fascinating. Number 3, people now want a relationship and not be viewed as a transaction. This is why I say we're moving in that to the relationship economy and H2H, human to human. Okay. Number 4, no one wants one size fits all marketing anymore. So that, you know, one size fits all, people are going, I don't want stuff shoved down my throat. People want to choose things and look at things and research things that are personal and relevant to them. So how do we give that to them? And then number 5, and this is one too that's a little bit controversial, but my opinion on this is passive video right now, while it's getting juiced by Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and all that, is like the 8-track tape of the music industry. It is like email back in the early 2000s. It is going to die out. Here's why. The 5th shift is people do not want monologue talk at you. They want dialogue, interact with them. Okay. So if you look at all these and you look at the shift that's happening from attention economy lead gen, which is defined in my world as I invite you into my process and persuade you to buy, which no one hardly wants to do anymore, to the relationship economy, which is build trust, build a relationship, and create demand. Okay. But in order to, and demand gen is defined as I am invited into the buyer's buying process. But in order to do that, I got to take them through awareness and consideration. And awareness just quickly is, how do you express your unique point of view? That whole category is how are you different? And what is your change of perspective? So if you're a marketing agency listening to this, you got to be distinctly different. This is not a USP. This is how is your different, right? You can't say, well, we have the best quality white glove service. That's blah, blah, blah. Or we are high quality, blah, blah, blah. Or we use some tool, blah, 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 right? You got to really express you're different, and then you got to change it. You got to give them change of perspective, because look, contextually, they're over here, right? And what you're trying to do is build that bridge.
Right.
So they have pains, that's their hell. The change of perspective is that bridge to your heaven. How are you going to get them there? April Dunford wrote a very cool book on this called Obviously Awesome. It's how do you take them from the context they know to the context they don't know? Because if you just slap them into the context they don't know, they're like lost puppies. It's like, and you know how it is with marketing and sales. As soon as there's confusion, they will do nothing, right? You won't get a sale, right? So those are the 5. And the other thing too is, as it relates to this, if you look at what's happening in lead gen, in a lot of studies, they really focus on the 3% who are ready to buy. But what about the other 97% who aren't ready to buy? And I would much rather try to work on the whole spectrum than just the 3%.
Yeah.
And, I've talked to over 150, I think, or so CEOs and founders now, Kevin. And what I have found, a lot of them are kind of starting to panic because their SDRs are not getting the quality of leads and the number of leads. They're yelling at marketing. Marketing's going, I'm trying, man, but it's harder than hell to get a good lead these days. Because, look, cold calling, we got blockers. If you look at our BS meters are at such an all-time high. If you look at that, as soon as you ask for an email, they're going, they're going to try to sell me. Or a sales funnel, it's like, forget it, man. I know I'm going to get sold. Upsell, downsell, cross-sell. All that stuff that guy was teaching at ClickFunnels, that stuff is just dying away because people are fed up with it. They're just done. And so
overwhelmed.
They're overwhelmed. Yeah. And so you got to basically, how do you cut through the noise? How do you build that trust and relationship? How do you support those 5 shifts in behavior that has happened? This is not something that's going to happen or happen. It's happened.
Yeah.
So I just tell people, look, you can stick your head in the sand over here in attention economy and lead gen, or you can say, I need to start making a shift. Now, I'm not saying you can't flip the switch. So keep doing your lead gen while you put your strategy in place for demand gen.
Right.
And that includes your website and
all of a sudden,
Yeah.
So what do you think the average company out there that is kind of making this shift, how difficult is it? Because, how many of these companies are just these massive ships that, like the Titanic, it's hard to turn them. It's hard to do a real change internally. So how many of these companies are, they can say, yeah, I get it, but man, I don't know how we would ever get there, based on the staff we have, based on the approach we have, the processes we have, the systems in place. That it seems like a pretty major shift.
Well, that's a very good question. And my answer is it isn't. And I'll explain why. So number one, if you look at that book back there, Founder Brand by Dave Gerhardt, that is a massively good book. And what that taught me is, this is David Cancel, CEO of Drift, which I think Drift sold for over $1 billion. They exited. Big company. They developed, and everyone nowadays needs to develop not a personal brand, a founder brand. And the distinction is, a personal brand is like Tony Robbins. And if you ever have a business that you're looking to exit and sell, Tony Robbins can't exit.
Yeah.
Can't. A founder brand, you're expressing your unique point of view. You are delivering the content, but you're expressing that unique point of view and that change of perspective, and you can still exit. Okay. So that's the first thing you need to do. And I will say this, HubSpot did a study last year. 70% of all consumers, Kevin, don't care about faceless companies or faceless brands. They want direct video interaction from the CEO or founder. And that includes Fortune 2000, Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies. It's not just us entrepreneurs and startup people. Everybody's got to get out in front of the camera. So if you're having trouble with that, I say practice, but get over yourself, because we're there. Look at podcasts. They've switched from audio to video now. And you can rip the audio off, but we have to be here talking to each other in front of these cameras and be okay with that. So that's number one. Number two, that shift, that's part of the reason why I developed Relatable, because I wanted to create a simple tool and framework. I'll talk about the framework in a second, but a tool that anybody could use anytime, anywhere. All they needed was their face, phone, and finger. So what Relatable does is you go on, it can help you through AI, write scripts. You can write your own, or you can just turn on the teleprompter, talk off the top of your head, which I do all the time now. I'll tell you what, when I first started, it's kind of like, when you were a kid and you were riding your bike and you had to have training wheels on, right? Because you didn't have balance, you weren't really sure, you did have confidence, right? And then sooner or later, right, you go to your mom or dad and go, I'm ready. And so they take the training wheels off and they give you a push and away you go, right? And look, I tell people in my company all the time when I talk to different people, I say, look, we eat our own dog food. I use Relatable all the time because it was a tool I wanted to create for myself. And oh, by the way, it's great for your company too. So Relatable, what it does is you can get on, you can turn on the teleprompter, and then you can go in and you set up your interactives. These can be questions. These can be what we call touchables. They can be custom buttons, images, icons, hotspots, whatever. But you're creating like a choose your experience. So here's an example. If you're a product type company like me, you're going to get on the founder or CEO, talk about what it is that you have, what your impact is, what this product is and does. And then you go, hey, what would you like to learn about for our product? This, or this. Let them choose. Everybody's got a different priority order. So instead of making it linear, you don't make it nonlinear. They choose, they can learn about that, and then you come back on, the founder comes on and goes, great, glad you enjoyed that. Now, if you're ready and you'd like to, go to a free trial, great. If you don't, would you like to learn about something else? Oh, okay, come back. Then they can pick another one. So this is about how this interactive, and during that time, you're asking them certain things. I mean, here's an example. We have, I'll give you an example with a result. We have a lady, she's a CEO for an AI company. And she set up her Relatable Interactive. And everybody's pushing shorts, right? It's gotta be 2 minutes or less, it's gotta be 1 minute or less. Well, it's kind of like good copywriting, right? It doesn't matter the length, as long as you keep people engaged. Right. So she's doing this where she gets on, she goes, hey, I'm not an AI show. She's waving her arms and things. And she talks them through like some of the common issues with AI and how, now her ideal profile for companies she goes after, they're not small. They're typically like 150 up to over $1 billion. And so what she does is she creates this. She goes, and from my experience, there's been 3 primary problems that these companies, corporations like yours have had. It's this, or this. They choose it, and then she gives a little mini training. And then, she didn't ask them. She could have asked them for an email opt-in there for the mini training because it's kind of like a quasi lead magnet. But all she did was took them through the training, and these trainings, Kevin, they were like 4 to 7 minutes each. And here's the magical thing that happened. And she's not the only one. This has happened to a lot of people using Relatable. She connects with people on LinkedIn. After she connects, that's the first thing she sends. She gets 70% at that conversion meeting.
Wow. That's pretty high, especially at companies that size. But she's getting I'm getting past the gatekeepers, obviously.
She's going right to them. Now, I will tell you this. So here's the thing. I'm not against email. I'm against email marketing. Yeah. So with Relatables, if you look at it this way, I don't care whether someone's using MailChimp, Drip, ConvertKit, whatever they want to use, or you could send out individual or group emails inside Relatable. But the difference is when you do that, there's a dynamic image or a GIF, and you just put tap here. They tap here, boom, the Relatable pops up and they're interacting with it. We are getting north of 50 to 60% open rates and 14 times click-through rates. So now email is no longer email because it's a interactive, choose your own experience adventure for them. And so this is where, Relatables. Now, I will say this. One other thing that's really important about Relatable, people need to understand, because this is the relationship economy. And this is how it's different from ClickFunnels, Kajabi, or the 22 plus other interactives out there. So I thought about this a lot. I thought, well, how do we develop relationships as humans? So we go through awareness, connection, engagement. That's where social stops. Also, you can't go beyond that. But if you think about like with your significant other, right? You go through nurture, trust building, respect, and then like for business, you and I, it's affinity, or for personal life, it's intimacy. So I thought, okay, I got to create something where I can create that whole process to build that relationship. And so our category name is interactive video relationships. And here's the relationships piece. which no one else has, because Interact is what they do, just like Kajabi and ClickFunnels. They take you from point A to point B. So Kevin, that's like going on the first date with your significant other, and at the end of the day, you drop down on one knee and go, "Hey, you want to get married?" I mean, we don't do that, but yet that's what we're doing in tech all the time. So what I decided is I'm going to create something different. So we have either what's called resume or nurture. So let's say somebody like you is going through one of my relatables, but it's like, oh, the phone rings, or you got to go to a meeting, or your wife's telling you, hey, it's dinner time, right? And you got to stop. Well, the worst thing you want to have done, and this has happened to all of us, we come back and it's like, oh, crap, I got to start the video all over again, or I got to find where I was at, right, in that YouTube video. Well, we have the ability for them to basically, wherever they stop, we can send them a text, email, WhatsApp, and resume them right where they left off. That's number one. Number two on the nurture is based on how you go through your experience and the answers and actions you take. We can send you other personal and relevant videos based on your answers and actions, because that's what you showed you were interested in, right?
Yeah.
So that's the
You're directing the experience.
Yeah. It's an experience, but it's an experience that person wants to have.
Right.
And they're getting other video content, or you're asking, hey, would you like to see something different? So it's always permission based. It's always let them choose. It's always let them be in the driver's seat. And that really helps when you go through, awareness and then consideration, which is virtual demos, use cases, white papers, competitor playbooks, all these things that you should be showing your customers before they go, okay, if it's enterprise, like you and another company, you're invited to the table. We're going to do a comparison. Or if it's a smaller play, it's like, okay, I'm doing the free trial. This is awesome, right? So this is how we created Relatable, was to create, I just tell people, I wanted to create something where you guys could have a coffee chat with 100,000 people at a time. And they could see you and they could hear you. But most importantly, you are asking them to be seen and heard in your video. And that's what people are looking for.
Yeah. And that's, I think through those relationships, through that interaction, that relational interaction, you do build the know, like, and trust, because it feels one-on-one. It feels like it's not just curated content, just trying to get me to do an action or whatever, that really is responsive, more than directive.
It feels like when I'm talking to you, it's like I'm talking to you, just you, right? Yeah. And that's what people are looking for. That they're looking for that, not this one size fits all. And the other thing too is have you heard about dark social at all? That term ever crossed? Okay. So dark social is another biggie. Dark social is not dark web, guys. So you don't need to, I'm not taking you down that path. Dark social is basically private messaging. And a lot of studies have been done now, Kevin. Up to 80% of all product and service recommendations are done through private messaging, text, email, WhatsApp, for people in Europe that don't use text. And so, we all know it as word of mouth marketing, right? And so, but now we have all these phones, and we have all this digital stuff. So it's digital word of mouth. So we built that into Relatable too. We call it viral share. So you could go through and go, you could set up for your business, Kevin, and at the very end, you send them to, or have a re-engagement, say, hey, if you liked this and this content that I provided with you and you learned something, you probably have some friends or colleagues that are just like you that probably need some help too. And it's just go ahead, there's going to be an upcoming icon, just tap on it and share it with your friends. You can send it to text. So if they do text, it goes right into their phone contacts database on their phone, on an iPhone or Android. They choose who they want to send it to. The link is carried through. And by the way, that link can be that video, or it can be a head end of a video series experience. You choose inside Relatable, and that's sent out to their friends and colleagues. Now think about that, right? You and I now know each other. If I sent you something, you at least go, well, yeah, I'm going to check it out. I know Peter, right? Versus getting something from somebody you don't know, which we consider spam.
Right.
Right.
And the phone doesn't identify it as potential spam.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't get blocked. So, and the best thing about that for everybody listening here, if you're doing phone and email, especially phone, we know how people open rates and text, especially from somebody that they know. That is a phone-to-phone plan that costs you exactly $0 to build your list.
Yep.
It's free.
Yep. And you get, once again, you're getting past the gatekeepers, because
Yeah.
you really are there. Like you said, I'm going to see that from Peter. I'm going to respond to. I'm at least going to click on it to see, hey, what did he send me, that type of thing. And there's some probably an inference that says, hey, I thought this was valuable enough to share with you, to take the time to share with you. But let's hypothetically, I'm a marketing agency owner specifically. So
Okay.
what's the handle here? What am I looking to do? What is this going to do to change my client's stance in the demand generation versus lead generation space?
Well, so Relatable was built for the entire customer journey, from prospect all the way through to turning customers into loyal fans. So for the business, they can use it themselves for sales or back end reminders. Like we didn't talk about this, but we have a whole reminder set. So if you're doing lives, webinars, podcast shows, in fact, we have a whole 6 template set for podcasters where it gives them the ability to use Relatable to find guests, find new people for to build their audience, interact and engage with their audience, and then sell products and services on the backside. Relatable can do all that for a podcaster. But for the people that they serve, the customers or clients that they serve, they can use Relatable too, whether they want to use it in a front end to acquire customers in a very relationship-based way to build that trust, or they want to use it on the back end. So for example, let's say there's marketing agencies that are focusing on dentists and chiropractors, right? So we'll say on a dentist, okay, and her name is Dr. Jane. Dr. Jane has her set of patients. Dr. Jane, as you probably know, right, if you drive around, there's like dentists every few blocks now. Mm-hmm. They're all over the place. A lot of competition. So what Dr. Jane needs is I need to add to my patient base, but I want to keep the ones I have loyal. So what Dr. Jane can do, here's the thing. It always has to be her talking to her patients. But what she can do is she can set up a video that says, hey, this is Dr. Jane. Really grateful to have you as a patient of mine. And as you know, guys, for proper dental health, I'd love to have you come in once every 6 months. You can get your teeth cleaning done. We can check your teeth out because we know about what happens when we don't take care of our gums and our teeth and the other diseases that can happen. So it's going to be really simple. There's going to be a button that pops up on the screen. All you got to do is tap on the button. You can add it to your Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, Outlook Calendar, and it will automatically remind you in 6 months. So it's a set and forget, right? So now, person goes, okay, great. They put it on their Google Calendar. 6 months from now, what happens, they get a push notification on their phone. Mm-hmm. But here's where it gets really cool. The push notification that they get, they tap on it. There's a custom message from Dr. Jane with a link that says tap here. They tap here. Dr. Jane pops up in another Relatable. It's like, yep. Hey, you're back. I'm glad. Mm-hmm. I know you got a busy lifestyle. You got to choose the time that's right for you to come in. But you're going to see there's going to be 3 buttons at the bottom while I'm talking here. You can call us, text us, or set an appointment on the calendar just to make it super simple for you. They do it on their phone while they're doing their day, and they got their appointment set and go in. She gets that long-term value of customer loyalty, right? And these are things that are so powerful. I mean, you think about agencies that work with HVAC companies, chiropractors, mm-hmm. dentists, mm-hmm. Digital agencies, other digital companies that are selling e-com, SaaS founders like myself. All these, they can build these relatables and charge a retainer fee and have the relatable for them as the license. And again, guys, look, I'm only bringing this up. If you like Relatable, great. If you don't, that's okay too. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything here, but I also will let you know that right now, before we raise the prices next year, Relatable costs $49 a month. It's not expensive to do all this. Everything's included, and we don't charge by minutes. We charge by views. And that basic package gives you 1,000 views a month, which for most businesses, that's yep. plenty of views. That's a lot, yep. to go through to either acquire new customers or keep the customers you have in that spectrum of the journey.
I mean, the way you have framed everything we've talked about tonight is, you said, hey, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you a story that kind of relates to this. Because, I mean, you really just painted a very broad and comprehensive picture in the 35 minutes or whatever we've been talking. But is there anything that you just want to briefly just like tie a nice bow around this conversation,
Yeah,
and really maybe even in the just the kind of the relationship economy space.
sure. Well, I will say this. There's a couple things. Then I'll give you one to tie the bow up really nicely for everybody listening. One is, guys, the relationship economy is here. It's not going away.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the internet. You're going to see it getting bigger and bigger and bigger. More and more people are going to interaction and community, relationship building, trust. Because, guys, think about it this way. You all know this phrase. People do business with people they like, know, and trust. And I'm a tech guy. I don't care how much AI. In fact, I have my opinions about how AI is going to ruin email inboxes even further. It's going to cause total mistrust for content in 2025. Everybody's going to think everything's written by AI.
Yeah.
I just did a post about my AI twin, which is the epitome of status quo. People, they don't want to talk to your twin. They want to talk to you. Okay. Yep. So to tie it up into a bow, Kevin, how can we get first? For right now, we have what's called a Relatable Accelerator Program. It is free. I don't charge for it. I have Mary Johnson, who's a wonderful lady. She's our ambassador coach. In 2 2-hour sessions, you will build your first relatable, whatever it is you want to build. A reminder one, a sales acquisition one, the one I talked about. You can put relatables on your website. By the way, we're getting 200 to 300% increased engagement times with those. But whatever you want to build, you will build it in those 2 2-hour sessions, and you'll be able to deploy it, and you have a free trial. So you can start getting meetings and leads or whatever you call them. You can start getting that before you even pay a penny, your first $49. And that is, if you're interested in something like that, if you guys are on LinkedIn, just find me on LinkedIn, connect with me, DM me. I'll get you set up with Mary. She's got a Relatable Interactive. She'll walk you through. She talks all about what the program is and does. At the end, I want, this goes back to the whole thing about we are here to create an impact and support a movement. And so this is why I'm doing it this way, because I want you guys to experience this different thing that will get you results. And you don't have to sit there and go, oh man, this is really cool, but I'm in for $1,000 or $2,000 before I can even get started.
Yep.
That doesn't create an impact. That creates a barrier.
Yeah, no doubt. That is not relationship building in that respect, for sure. Well, Peter, this has been a great conversation, and I mean, I could just sit here and just continue to ask you questions, because everything you say generates more thoughts. My mind is just spinning, and I could literally chase them forever. We're just gonna have another episode to kind of wrap some things up here, but. What an exciting time to be around and to see just this early stages of Relatable, and to see, this is really just reacting to who we are as consumers, and as buyers, and, to really kind of map out the whole buyer journey and be able to take them from A to, as the Brits say, Z instead of Z, They go A to Z here. But I want to shift right now to our rapid fire round. I want to honor your time, but these are kind of disparate questions, but there's a method to our madness here. So I'm going to ask these questions. First thing that comes to mind, very quickly, just respond. Did you get along with your parents growing up?
No.
Typical. That's right. Most of us would probably say no. That's right. You have children?
I do.
Siblings?
I have 4.
So on a typical work day, what time do you get up in the morning?
4:30.
What time do you go to bed at night?
11 to 11:30.
11 to 11:30. So favorite vacation spot in the world, money not an object?
Probably where I used to live in Hawaii, which I just came from, up in North Shore, Oahu, up by Kahuku. Yeah. I love that place.
You're king for a day in the marketing space. What is one change that you would make about marketing?
Teach people how to be relatable.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
No pun intended. Peter, it's been a great chat today. Man, you are an absolute, Wikipedia article about, this space, and just like you're a large language model just walking around with the amount of experience and knowledge you have. So we've just scratched the surface, I'm sure, but just thank you for sharing your time, sharing your expertise. and helping agency owners grow and scale their business, man. I appreciate your time and just hope you have a blessed holidays.
Thank you. And Kevin, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really grateful. It's these kinds of things. I love doing them. I love talking to people, through the digital airways, just to get people to think, there might be something here. And yeah, I've been having some trouble with my lead gen, and I don't see it improving anytime. 2025 is going to be this year for transition and transformation into this new relationship economy and the human.
Well, we are anxious to see how it's going to unroll. Peter, thanks again.
Yeah.
Take care.
You're welcome. All right.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. To learn more, go to umbrellaus.com.